Welcome back to the Jag Bros. I'm one of your hosts, JT Raymond, alongside my two brothers, Jack and Joey. We're excited to dive into some off-season things that are happening with the Jacksonville Jaguars recently. Some of the Jaguar fans might have just heard some of the big news that happened recently. But Joey, the big news is, of course, that you just got married and went on your honeymoon. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was incredible. Got married here in Texas, had a nice Jaguars cake. I believe we put it up on our Instagram, and then went to Italy for 2 weeks, and that was just incredible. And then actually went to London for a couple days, and there were a lot of Jaguars fans. I rocked my Jaguars hat and got a lot of Go Jags, and love to see all the London fan base out there.
Let's go. Well, congrats, Joey and Maddie. Super excited for y'all. And of course, we love Jags fans all over the world. And I'm just going to say it's great to be back. We're just 2 months away from preseason, 3 months away from the regular season, and Jags football is coming back and the Jag Bros are back.
Woo! Yeah. I mean, that was obviously the big news that all the Jaguar fans have been talking about recently. Nothing else happened important, did it?
I heard something.
Not that same level.
Happened just about a week ago.
There was a small deal. I think we re-signed one of our players to a contract. I don't remember how big it was. Joey,
we
what was it again?
Tyler Shat. Yeah, we got Tyler Shatley. I remember that wasn't too long ago.
Oh, that's that. Was that it, Jack? Are we missing anything else?
No, that's the big one. Well, obviously, for once, the Jaguars are all over the national media because we did make one of the biggest NFL contracts in NFL history. We gave Trevor Lawrence an extension, 5 years, $275 million. That is the second biggest deal in NFL history in terms of total dollar amount, just behind Patrick Mahomes' deal for 10 years, $400+ million, which I bet his agent is wishing that they didn't do a 10-year deal, but that's another deal. It's also tied for the biggest in terms of pay per year, which is $55 million, same as Joe Burrow there. Guaranteed money is $142 million, fully guaranteed. And right now, I'm going to be honest, a lot of Jaguars fans are loving it. We're loving being in the spotlight. We're loving, getting some national buzz, and we're excited for our quarterback. But a lot of the national media is hating on us, hating on the Jaguars, saying this is a terrible deal, saying Trevor Lawrence is overrated. So for the first time, now we get to hear what are the opinions, thoughts of the Jag Bros. What did y'all think of this deal?
I'll go first. I actually love this deal. The first time I just read it on Twitter, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I thought it was a little bit overpriced. But then when I got down to the details and I heard other people talking about it, it doesn't kick in for 2 years. So he's not getting that $55 million next year. He's getting it after the 5th-year contract. So he has 2 years under his rookie and then his 5th year, and then the $55 million kicks in. So by the time that it actually kicks in, he's going to be probably the 5th to 8th most paid quarterback. He's not going to be the number one paid quarterback. Like, it actually, and you factor in the other two deals, it ends up being around more 50 million to like 48 million. So I actually love the deal that it doesn't kick in right away. You lock in a price early, because if you had waited, it's only going to go up. It's not like it's going to go down anytime soon. So I actually love this deal that it doesn't kick in for 2 years. Really smart.
That's how every extension works. So let me rephrase it. That's how most extensions work, especially when you're talking about the Joe Burrow deal or Josh Allen or any of these other guys on their rookie deal still.
Some of them I know wipe out the rookie deal and they go straight into it, whereas we extended to the 5th year, and so it doesn't pay out for another 2 years. So I don't know. I really like it that way. The 55 million isn't until 2 years down the road. Dak's going to probably get more. Like, there's other people who will start to get paid more, and he will not be the most paid quarterback.
Yeah, there's a real possibility that he won't be the highest paid quarterback here in a couple of weeks. Obviously, all the news now from an NFL standpoint goes to Tua and potentially him resetting the market. But I do agree with you, Joey, and I'm really curious where JT is going to be. I have a feeling of where I know he is going to be, but this is our first time really talking about it as three brothers, as the Jag Bros on the podcast. And so we'd love to hear your thoughts. But I think it's a reality of the quarterback market. Is Trevor Lawrence overpaid for what he's done? Yes. But I also think this is the best situation, best scenario. And you've now seen the Jaguars pay top dollar for their best player on offense, their best player on defense, and they're proven, which in the past, a lot of people said, oh, the Jaguars are cheap. They don't pay their players. They're a small franchise. Well, you can't say that now about the Jaguars. But JT, I'm dying to know, how are you feeling about this move?
So I've had a few days to digest this. And I think I've figured out how I want to describe it. As a player, re-signing Trevor makes sense. I like Trevor. I've said multiple times on the podcast, I think Trevor has the tools to be a Super Bowl level winning quarterback. Jeff Prosser on 1010XL constantly says NFL teams don't get better, they get better quarterbacks. Trevor has the tools to be the best quarterback in Jaguar history. Locking him in longer term makes sense. All of those things I agree with. Everything else I have problems with has nothing to do with the fact that we decide to re-sign Trevor, even though, to your point, Jack or Joey, I can't remember who said it, that he hasn't necessarily earned it, or you haven't seen the production on the field. Fair. And I agree. And in 2 of the 3 years have not exactly been top 5 level quarterback worthy, but he has all the tools to potentially grow into that. That aside, from a business perspective, I think this deal is offensive to me. Like, how can you do that? Number one, you're in Florida. You don't have state income taxes. Florida should never be, Florida athletes or Texas athletes should never be the top highest paid anything, because you already have that in your favor. So you could say, and let's say apples to apples, Tua, who's out, or excuse me, Herbert, who's out in California versus Trevor in Florida, you'd say, look, yes, he may be making slightly more to you than you. However, your take home is going to be more because of the fact that you're not paying state income taxes. That's number one. Number two, if you look at the best quarterbacks, the ones that have done successful, oftentimes they are not actually the most paid quarterback. Mahomes obviously breaks that mold, but for years, Tom Brady was rarely the highest paid quarterback in the league, and oftentimes underpaid. And he would sometimes take pay cuts so that the rest of the team could be better, and they could afford to pay more for their offensive line or for their defense to put the team in a better place to win. And finally, like, why rush into this year? Joey, you saying like, oh, well, it's only going to go higher. Yeah, maybe. But if you're already at the top, like, unless he wins the Super Bowl next year, which maybe he will, I can't imagine that the numbers are drastically that different than what we just agreed to. So even if you come at Trevor and say, hey, 5 for 220, which is right around where Herbert is, which is already, you're still getting a fantastic deal, Trevor. And it allows us, it frees up another $50 million over 5 years, $12 million a year extra that we could allocate toward a third or fourth wide receiver, toward another offensive lineman, toward a playmaker on defense. Like that to me, like, it just is offensive from a business perspective. It just feels like a desperate low market team reaching to overpay some of their athletes. And you know what? You're right, Joey. It doesn't kick in for 2 years. There is also a possibility that Trevor is a bust. I'm not saying he is, and I'm not saying he's going to be, but what if we wake up in 2 years and Trevor is not who we thought he was? And oh, by the way, we now are strapped with this $300 million contract for the next 5 years and just have to tank for another 5 years. So like, it's a very head scratching in my mind why we did this from a business perspective. You've talked about before, Joey, Trent Baalke, we don't think is a very good negotiator. And I think you could have easily squeezed out an extra 10 to 15% out of this contract and put yourself in the team in a much better position long-term.
Wow. That is a take from someone who has been hurt by the Jags way too much, and is living in the past. There's no way in the world that Trevor is going to be bad enough to where this deal doesn't make somewhat of a sense. Even hurt, he was still playing well. Like, there's no point where you've seen his floor being bad to where we need to tank. He's never going to be benched. He's shown that he is at least good enough to always play. Now, he may never reach the ceiling that he is, but he does not have a floor to where you're like, oh my gosh, we need to tank the season. That's just a absolute ludicrous take. And then you also bring up Tom Brady. That's a once in a lifetime thing. His wife was making more than he was, so he didn't need to take home as much money. So that's a very different type of like
You're
thing.
living in Jacksonville. It's a significantly cheaper cost of living city than most of the others. It's not like he's living in San Francisco and New York.
That doesn't matter. The agent is trying to get the most out of it. You can bring in, cost of payment, but that's also just how the cookie crumbles. Like you can bring in New York, California, but in the end, they're not going to really matter in a deal like this. It's how much do you think Trevor is going to be the future? And the Jags organization has never wavered in the fact that Trevor is the future. Now, fans may have been like, we're not sure or whatever, but that is the only people that have been, Trevor is maybe not the best. The organization has been behind him 1000%. They've never wavered. They went and actually got a deal done with someone that they believe wants to be in Jacksonville, and someone actually wants to be here. Jalen Ramsey, a star that we wanted to make the face of Jacksonville, didn't want to be here. Ngakoue gave him a great deal, didn't want to be here. The tide is turning in Jacksonville where people actually want to be here in Jacksonville. People want to be the face of Jacksonville. You saw it with Josh Allen. You're seeing it with Trevor Lawrence. Things are turning around in Jacksonville. This whole hurt persona, maybe you need to see a counselor, JT, and talk out your pains with the Jaguars, because that's the old Jaguars. There is a new picture in Jacksonville, and you don't have to be so hurt.
You're so wrong. The difference is those are two different types of personalities. Guess what? Trevor most likely wants to stay in Jacksonville because that fits his lifestyle and his mold. Josh Allen was a Kentucky boy. Jalen Ramsey wants the starlight. He wants to be in Miami or New York or San Francisco or LA, somewhere where it's big, flashy. Like that's just their personalities. So even if we had overpaid them and made them the number one paid, that's just who they are. It's not that all of a sudden the tide is turning. It's like, no, we just got a couple of people that fit this type of city better than what some of the guys have previously. And guess what? Here's the situation. Here's a question for you. Let's say you're Trevor's agent and you were coming to Jacksonville and you're trying to make your first offer for a 5-year deal. How much more do you think they were actually initially offering? How much more do you think Trent Baalke talked them down from the price that they originally came at with to get to 275?
Well, here's the deal. When we look at the numbers and the business standpoint, again, the big guy on the market now is Tua, which everyone says he is. And again, he also plays in Florida. The number that's being floated around now is 60 plus million. The quarterback market every year has gone up 10 to 20%. And we talked about Mahomes. Yes, he had the biggest deal in terms of 400 million for 10 years, but he's now the 7th or 8th highest paid quarterback. And he's probably, to Joey's point, in the next year or two, if they don't restructure that, he will fall out of the top 10 highest paid quarterbacks. So again, is Trevor Lawrence overpaid? Yes. He is not the number one quarterback in the league. There's no question about it. But at the same time, you are worth what the market is available. There's just no way that Trevor Lawrence was ever going to take a deal under 50 million, especially knowing that, hey, if I play pretty well this year, that number is going to skyrocket. It reminds me a lot of last year. We talked about Josh Allen and the potential for an extension. Think of how much money we could have potentially saved if we had extended Josh Allen last year. Last year in the offseason, I was saying don't extend him. And I love the deal because he proved it and because you show your players, hey, if you play well, we will pay you. But the reality is this is the market for the quarterbacks. Like there's no escaping. And I just want to go down a rabbit trail because I think it's interesting when you think about, because a lot of people are talking about, okay, what if Trevor is a bust? Worst case scenario, everyone's looking at the Daniel Jones deal that now the Giants are strapped with. Well, you look at what are the options for the Jaguars if Trevor Lawrence does not work out after this year or next year. There's really no good option. Yes, you could wait and pay a little bit more. Yes, you could wait and maybe save a little bit, but it's hard to argue that there's a whole lot better option for the Jaguars out there.
That's fair. But ultimately what this deal does is it puts extra pressure on your ability to draft well, because now you have to be able to have a lot of young talent. You have to be able to hit on more than 1 or 2 draft picks every 2 or 3 years. in order to be a viable team.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true, but that's what the good teams in the NFL do is draft well. That's just something the Jaguars are going to have to learn to do. You can't make a team off the free agency. Like, it's just not sustainable. You can kind of do it for a year or two, but eventually you have to replace those people. That's just how the NFL is. So we're getting to the point where, yes, we've done the 2 years in the free agency. We spent a ton 3 years ago. We spent a lot this year. And this is pretty much going to have to be the end. We're going to have to start drafting well. But that's a future problem. Right now, we're talking about the contract. And as Jack said, this is the quarterback market. If you waited a year and everyone's view of this team at the organization and everything is going to the playoffs. So what happens if Trevor leads to the playoffs, has a great season, maybe not MVP, but he's like gets a few votes? That's now going to be a 60 plus million contract. And
Easily.
you're right. I wanted to sign Josh Allen last year when no one else wanted to. And then what happened? He went and had 17.5 sacks, and now we have to pay him a ridiculous contract. And I mean, I'm glad that he did it. I'm glad that we re-signed him. But if you did it earlier, it's great. Now we've locked in 55 million and it doesn't hit for 2 years. The cap is only rising in the NFL. What? It rose like 55 million this year alone, and it's only going to get better. And it's only going to get bigger. So eventually that 55 million isn't going to be less than like 15% of the team's cap. It's only going to get smaller. We're only seeing contracts get bigger and bigger. They're getting the size of NBA, MLB size contracts. It's just where it's going to. It's what it's trending towards. It's the most watched sport. You're going to get more and more money. And that's just the thing now. So locking in 55 million now is way better than having to wait a few years and lock in 65 million.
Most watched sport in America, but we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But I will say, if for those, because I'm sure there are Jaguars fans who would say, hey, we don't like the deal. It is too much. I'm not sold on Trevor Lawrence. I would say the good side for you is going to be that the guaranteed money, fully guaranteed money, is 142 million, which yes is a lot, but that only puts Trevor in 11th in terms of fully guaranteed money. For instance, Lamar Jackson, who made a big signing last year, he had over $200 million fully guaranteed. And I think if Trevor Lawrence does not pan out this year and you're in a weird situation, you're also going to be in a situation where, which we've talked about in the pod before, either Balky or Peterson is gone, or potentially both. Like, there would be drastic changes if, especially after just paying this much amount of money, if the Jaguars don't perform at a very, very high level and at least make the playoffs, there's going to be some drastic changes. So if you don't like the direction of the Jaguars, I would say this is going to be a big make or break year in a lot of ways.
And if you heard my rant and you interpreted that as I'm on your side and saying that, like, oh, I'm not a believer in Trevor, that's not what I'm saying. I just said that I think he has the talent to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and we not really had anybody else like that. So don't hear me from that perspective. My main point is, how much more beneficial would it be if we had $10 to $15 million more per? I just don't think that the Trevor Lawrence side and agent was coming at a number that was drastically higher than the 275. I think we just couldn't negotiate or talk it down even a few percentage points to set up the team for success. Even if you're just framing it like, hey, look, Trevor, we think you're a Super Bowl quarterback. We want to make a big investment in you. We view you as a top 5 level quarterback. We view you as a guys. That being said, we need to also do things that are good for the team. Hey, we want to give you, because that's what we believe in you. We want to give you 220 a year, or 220 for a 5 year. Because there's no way that the Trevor team was starting at 325 or 300 and we talked them down 25 million. Just thinking about where Joe Burrow and thinking about the rest of those guys and where they are. And you know what? Miami actually done the 60 million yet. So it'll be interesting to see if they're willing to fork that type of money over and to a guy who is potentially one concussion away from being completely done in his career.
I mean, yeah, but that's also Miami and also Dallas's issue. They have to re-sign their quarterbacks, and they both want like 60 million now. And I think you're right. Maybe they didn't come down off the negotiated price that much, but they did extend it out a year. I don't think the team wanted the Jaguars to accept the 5th-year option, pushing the 55 million out a whole nother year. So that means you still have this year and next year that money's not hitting, and you can still go get weapons. Eventually, you're not going to be able to go get weapons in the free agency, but you at least pushed it off another year to where that money does not hit and you can still go get some big name players. Now, after that, yes, it's not going to happen, but you were going to have to do that anyways. You were going to have to resign Trevor eventually, and it was going to happen that you're not going to be able to go in the free agency and pay big time players, but you pushed it off a year. And so now you have 2 years still to go sign some free agencies. I think Trent's actually done a good job managing the cap. I thought we weren't going to have that much playroom in this free agency, and somehow we ended up with more money than we started out with this free agency. So I think he's done a fairly good job with that. And as I said, the cap's only going to get bigger. So that means you're going to have more money to spend. So I don't think that Trevor's contract is going to hurt us going to get players for at least the next 2 years at all.
Yeah, but that goes back to the point Jack and I were making on our last episode where we were breaking down the draft and some of the free agency moves we've done. Is so far, it doesn't really feel like Jacksonville is making moves to go all in this 2-year window. And so and you took the other side of that argument, Joey, and a lot of that is yet to be seen. It just feels like the guys we're drafting, the guys we're making bets on are guys that have a freakishly high ceiling, but they haven't necessarily shown it from a production standpoint. Oh, hey, it might take them 2 or 3 years to grow into that performance. And so I don't know. It's just from a front office standpoint, bulky and have a lot of question marks with some of that type of decision making, despite the fact that I do by and large like the fact that we were able to lock down Trevor.
I will agree with you here, JT, because once we saw all the news pick up, Trevor Lawrence contract extension is talking, I don't think we ever would have got to 220. The numbers seem to be at least 50 million was going to be the bottom line. And could we have shaved off some? And would that be nice for the future? Absolutely. But I think once the contract extension talks began to happen, it really showed me, hey, the Jaguars are building this a little bit more slower. They're not all in. And I just don't think this squad we have right now is a Super Bowl contender for this year. I think the goal is that we're building pieces towards being a contender in the next 2 to 3 years, because to your point, JT, a lot of those draft guys, I'm big on the Brian Thomas Jr. fan, but he is more of a long-term project. Mason Smith is the definition of a long-term project. And the fact that we had chances to potentially move up in the draft in the first and second round and go get a more day one ready guy, I think just shows that he's playing more and more for the long term. And hey, maybe that pans out, but for me, it just means I'm tempering expectations for the Jaguars in this season. I think we still need to make the playoffs. Otherwise, this thing could blow up. But I don't think this team is a Super Bowl contender right now.
I mean, we'll see. But let's go on. And there are rumors that there could be a whole nother long-term deal done here. Who do you think it is? And who is the most deserving of getting another long-term extension deal done with the Jaguars this offseason?
The 3 main candidates are going to be cornerback Tyson Campbell. It's going to be safety Andre Cisco and running back Travis Etienne, who also got his 5th year extended because he was a first-round selection in that same year as Trevor. It'll be interesting if the rumors are true. I don't know if I'd roll with any of those 3 right now. If I had to guess who it's going to be, it seems like rumors are pointing more towards Campbell, which makes me nervous, but I don't think I would roll with any of those 3, to be honest.
Yeah, if it was Christian Kirk, I feel like I could swallow that way more than either of the 3 that you named, Jack. And I think those are the kind of the 3 leading candidates. Quickly, ETN makes 0 sense. You don't re-sign and you don't overpay for a running back. It's just the state of the situation. And that's why you drafted Tank Bigsby, is because you ideally hoped that he would potentially backfill ETN as ETN continues to age. And then the other 2, they've had some nice flashes. They've had some nice stints where they've been good, but I still would like to see them do that on a much, much more consistent basis, especially if there's not going to be any type of discount by signing somebody to a long-term deal.
Yeah, I mean, of the three, I think Travis has earned the most to have an extension, but
100% agree with you
unfortunately,
there.
like yeah, it is the running back market. You don't re-sign running backs, which is just sad. I mean, we'll see if it is Travis. He's earned it. He's most likely to be a Pro Bowler, like plays incredibly well. He would have had a much better season last year if we had any sort of offensive line. But I really like Cisco a lot more than Campbell. I really don't wish that it's Campbell because he's only had one good season. His first season wasn't very good, and then he had a great second season. And then yes, he was injured the third season, but even when he wasn't injured, I didn't see the same kind of spark, I guess, as I did in his second season. But Cisco's been way more consistent. He had 4 interceptions 2 years ago. He had 4 interceptions last year. He's a heavy hitter. He's an extremely solid safety who has an even higher ceiling. He's still only, I believe, 25. Like he's very good and can only get better. He's had, as I said, 8 interceptions in the last 2 years, and that's really incredible. He's always a ball hawk. I mean, he's gotten hurt the last 2 seasons with his shoulder. I would want to be careful of that, but I think he may be deserving of a long-term contract because safeties are kind of hard to come by, especially ones that can lay the wood and also get interceptions. I think he is a really is almost there to becoming a big star.
Jack, I can't wait for a few weeks in July when we're actually having this conversation. We figure out who it was, and it happens to be Campbell. And Joey gets on here and talks about how, oh, Balky did another masterclass thing, and glad we secured him, and he was a stud in year 2, but was banged up year 3. I can't wait for that conversation.
No, I really am not a massive Campbell fan. Like, if we resign him, I'm going to wish him the best of luck. I'll cheer him on because I'm a Jags fan, but I just don't think he's shown any of that. And I also don't think he would want to be re-signed because they're only going to give him, what, 10 million maybe?
No,
And
no. Cornerback market
I,
is a lot higher than which,
well, I know, but he hasn't shown anything. So, like, they're not
Well,
going to
we
come
love
at him.
overpaying people that haven't shown anything.
Oh, well,
yeah,
Trevor,
there's a real argument.
you're betting on the future. Campbell, I don't think you're betting on the future as much. And so
You're betting that Campbell Island.
I believe Campbell would want to be almost maybe like Josh Allen. I'm not sure if we offered Josh Allen a contract last year, but I think he would want to bet on himself, say, well, let me show you in a year, and then you pay me a ridiculous contract.
The only problem with that, Joey, is we said the same thing about Trevor Lawrence. We thought that the extension this year would not happen. We would say Trevor Lawrence would want to prove him. And the Jaguars said, hey, we'll make you tied for the highest paid quarterback. And so I'm not saying they're going to make Campbell the highest paid cornerback, but the cornerback market is hot. I will say the only good thing, speaking of cornerbacks too, Jerry Jones, everyone has been super hyped on in terms of practice and training camps and rookie mini camps. So hopefully that alleviates some of the pressure of Tyson Campbell having to come back and be dominant. But you could make an argument that the trajectories have been similar for Campbell and for Trevor. Campbell was very good in 2022. A lot of people could make a strong argument that he was a top 10 corner in the league, and then he deals with injuries in 2023 and he massively struggles. I would say Campbell more than Trevor, but you could say, well, it's similar. And Campbell's very young. He was drafted really young. So you say, well, that's betting on the future. Now, again, I don't want to go that route. And I love Cisco. Jaguars fans love Cisco. He is a fan favorite, but he's a guy that struggled with injuries. And I just don't love the idea of, hey, you're coming off a regular season collapse where we missed the playoffs and we're rewarding player left and right with huge big time deals.
Great point about an optics, Jack. And yeah, Cisco, I like Cisco. He's a fan favorite. You're right. But he also feels like one of those guys that us as Jaguar fans value so much more than the actual rest of the league.
Correct.
Like, I think Cisco is great, but if you actually tell me, or if you look at some of these things that are ranking them, he's probably more of like a top 3rd level guy than like a top 5 level safety.
Let me just jump in real quick because PFF did release a recent rankings on safeties and they put him at 32nd. And PFN has him at 28th right now, Cisco, that is. And so, again, you play two safeties, so they're putting him right at about middle of the road. I think every Jaguars fans would say, well, y'all don't watch ball, y'all don't watch the Jaguars. And there's some
It's highly
truth to that.
underrated.
Yes, I would say that too. But to your point, JT, depending on the dollar amount, I don't know that you could agree to a top 5 deal here.
No. Yeah, I don't think you could agree to a top 5 deal either. And you're right also with the Campbell and Trevor lookalikes, but there's one huge difference, at least to me, is the floor to Campbell is way lower. Like if he bust, like I could see him being a terrible cornerback versus if Trevor bust, I think the lowest he can go is like a Ryan Tannehill. Like his floor isn't that low. Like if he's not playing well, he's still going to win you games. He's still going to get you like 6 wins, even if he's not playing well. Yeah, so that's the difference is the floor of these two.
And I've seen some comparisons of Daniel Jones and Trevor, and the statistics for 3 years are truly identical. Like there's very little that you can look at, but like and there is noise in that numbers.
I really hate the statistics stuff going on, though.
Joey, I agree.
People are like, Dak is just as good as Patrick Mahomes. Look at these statistics.
Same numbers.
You can manipulate the numbers any way you want. Take the numbers of half of the season in 2022 and the beginning of 2023, and Trevor is just as good as Patrick Mahomes. Like, you can take the numbers and change them any way you want. Like, I'm really tired of seeing all these numbers. Oh, take Trevor's first year and add it all together, and he's bad as Daniel Jones or he's bad as Mac Jones. Like, you can make the numbers look any way you want. It's really a lot more the eye test, and people are just using that for Twitter bait and all that. I just really hate it.
99% agree with everything you were saying. And that was actually my point, was to say that that's not a very fair comparison. My bigger point of that is you had this hodgepodge offensive mess with Urban Meyer and his whole staff going in 14 different directions and a rookie quarterback with no talent around him. Whereas Daniel Jones, you have one of the best offensive minds currently with Daboll coaching you and getting the most out of you. And some of it's system, right? You have, if you look at Dallas the last couple of years, you have a situation where a very pass heavy, high investments in multiple wide receivers. And that's just, and their defense at times was not great. So you're in constant shootouts. And so like to your point, Joey, there is some noise in that statistics. That being said, you are a little bit of who you are. You are what your record is. You are what your statistics are. You are some of those things too. So at this point, do I think he will outperform Daniel Jones over the career? Yes, absolutely. He's been a turnover machine. The dude fumbles every other game and throws an interception the other games. So like, it's not like we can't, so like that hasn't necessarily gone away. And so like, there are things that we as Jaguar fans can project like, oh no, he's going to continue to get better. That's one of the biggest problems in his game. And you turn that around. And if we can just get slightly better in the red zone. Yeah, that is correct. Those are the little tweaks that we need to make. And that is why we made some of the decisions we made in the off season. To be determined though, technically, if that actually is what happens.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Joey. I'm tired of these stats and graphics. And the worst part to me too is anyone can post on Twitter and it blow up. Some of the NFL analysts running with this stuff of saying, oh, Gardner Minshew, same stats, because you can pull other stats that make Trevor Lawrence look amazing. So here's just a few. Trevor Lawrence in his 3 seasons has had the worst drop rate, highest drop rate of any quarterback. He also is in the top 4 in the last 2 seasons with most passing yards alongside Mahomes, Allen, and Jared Goff, the only 4 quarterbacks to go over 4,000 yards in those 2 years. And then you look at his career, even with that terrible rookie season, he's in the top 5 of quarterbacks all time in terms of passing yards in their first 3 seasons, along with Justin Herbert, Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, and Joe Burrow, with Trevor having 11,770 yards in those 3 seasons. My point is, he's not either one of those. He's not a top 3, top 4 quarterback right now. And he's not this Daniel Jones, Gardner Minshew, Mac Jones, whatever. He is a borderline top 10 quarterback that, yes, has huge problems, JT, with turnovers. That's got to get better. That struggled a lot in the red zone, potentially because of play calling and receivers and other stuff. But still, he's got to get better in those areas. And he's borderline top 10 that he could go, and he's got the potential. There's a reason he's number one. There's a reason he's been massively hyped. There's a reason he won championships in high school and college, and that you like him as a potential future Super Bowl quarterback, but he's not either one of these narratives. So yeah, I'm with you, Joey. Throw out some of these stupid stats, and Trevor Lawrence, borderline top 10 with a shot of getting into that elite quarterback group. And you pay a quarterback a lot of money if he's got the potential to win a Super Bowl for you.
Well, there's only one way to change this whole perspective and for Trevor to prove his contract, and that's out on the field. And I can't wait. We're only a couple months away. I'm so excited for this team, adding Eric Armstead, Mitch Morris. It just seems like we have the ability to be even better than we were. Everyone's so hyped on Houston Texans, but they were literally one play away from not making the playoffs. All Gardner Minshew had to do was make that first down, and they don't make it. So, I mean, they're looking exactly like we were last year. And so we'll just see what happens. I can't wait. We will get into the offseason a little bit more, talk about some AFC South stuff on the next episode. But until then, we're going to sign off.
Go.